They changed the price the day she was gone. The phone call lasted for minutes. By the time my best friend hung up, everything she and her husband had worked toward for the past 5 years was already gone. Not possibly gone. Not in danger, gone. The bank had denied the loan not because Dana and Marcus were responsible, not because they had missed payments or hidden anything on the application, but because the asking price had been raised by $80,000 without a single word of warning. I want you to understand what that means. 5 years of savings. 5 years of skipped dinners and quiet birthdays, and every spare dollar pointed at one thing, erased with a number change nobody had bothered to mention. But to understand how we got here, I need to take you back to where this all started. This story, as urgently shared on Reddit, is told entirely from one person's perspective, mine. And I want to be clear from the beginning, I am not going to pretend I handled everything perfectly. I did not. But I am also not going to pretend I regret a single thing we did. Dana has been my best friend since we were teenagers. She is the kind of person who shows up when you need her before you have even thought to ask, the kind who was at my door with food before I had processed my own bad news. She built a real life with Marcus, her husband, 5 kids, loud house, the kind of home where something is always on the stove and somebody is always laughing about something the rest of you missed. They did not have a lot of money. What they had was each other, and they made it stretch. The house they rented was nothing beautiful. Old, run down, in a part of the city that cost more than it should have and less than everywhere else. The kitchen looked like a time capsule from a decade nobody wanted to revisit. And the drains, I have to tell you about the drains, because they matter later. The drains had a smell on bad days that hit you the moment you opened the front door. A deep, sitting thing. I used to joke the house had personality. Dana always laughed and said that was one way to describe it. They made it home anyway, because that is what Dana does. The landlady was a woman I will call Eleanor. Privately wealthy, the kind of wealthy that owns property portfolios the way other people own furniture, and she was, genuinely, a good person. She froze Dana and Marcus's rent for 5 years. Not because the law required it. Not because she forgot. Because she saw a family working hard and chose, simply and without ceremony, to make their lives a little easier. She also told Dana, more than once, that when they had saved enough to qualify for a mortgage, she would sell them the house at the price they had agreed on together. No auction, no games, just a simple, honest arrangement between 2 people who respected each other. They knew she meant it because she had done the same for others. Different properties, different families. Same woman. And so for 5 years, Dana and Marcus saved. Every tax return. Every overtime shift Marcus pulled. Every birthday where the envelope went into the account instead of towards something they deserved. I watched them do this from the inside. I knew what it cost them. I knew how many times the number felt impossibly far away and they kept going anyway. They called Eleanor on a Tuesday. They were ready. She sounded genuinely happy for them. 2 days later, Eleanor was no longer with us. I need you to sit with that for just a moment. 2 days. She was gone before a single document had been signed. Gone before anything existed on paper. Gone in a way that left Dana and Marcus holding 5 years of hard-won savings and absolutely nothing to show for it legally. This estate passed to Eleanor's 4 children, each already wealthy in their own right, now inheriting a portfolio of properties worth more than most people will see in 3 lifetimes. When they first contacted Dana and Marcus, they were measured and reassuring. Probate needed to settle, they said. After that, the sale would go through exactly as planned. They had no intention of disrupting anything their mother had arranged. You have our word, and here is the thing about that. I believed them. Not completely, but enough. Dana believed them more than enough. Because the alternative, that for already wealthy people would look at a family of 7 and choose to squeeze them for money they did not need, felt too bleak to seriously consider. People like to be decent, I told myself. Especially when being decent costs them nothing. Probate settled. The heirs confirmed the sale. Dana and Marcus applied for the loan. The bank ran the numbers. Denied. The asking price had been raised by $80,000. No warning. No conversation. And then came the detail that turned the whole thing into something else entirely. The house was going to open market. An open house, 7 days from now. The market was running hot. The property would almost certainly sell at the first showing. 7 days to close, a gap nobody had warned them about. 7 days before the life they had spent half a decade building could be handed to a stranger with a deeper bank account and no connection to those walls whatsoever. 7 days before a family of 7 might be searching for an affordable 4-bedroom rental in a market where rents had nearly doubled since Eleanor had quietly, generously kept theirs in place. Dana called me that night. She went quiet in a way I had never heard from her. Not crying, not yelling, just a quiet. The kind that means someone is holding everything together by sheer force and does not want you to hear the effort. I listened until she was done. Then I said, "Okay, give me a few days. I had an idea forming. I want to be real with you about where my head was that night. I was not calm. I was not strategic yet. I was angry in that very specific, very still way, the kind where you do not raise your voice because you have decided raising your voice would actually make you feel better. And you are not ready to feel better. Not yet. You want to hold the anger. You want to use it for something. My first instinct was not a plan. My first instinct was to drive directly to the oldest heir's home and say everything I was thinking, clearly and at length, directly to his face. I sat in my car with my keys in my hand for 20 full minutes going through exactly how that conversation would go. I had a whole speech. I was genuinely proud of the speech. Then I put the keys down. Because confronting a wealthy man on his own driveway was not going to get my best friend her house. And getting Dana her house was the only outcome I actually cared about. So I got to work. The question was simple once I framed it right. The property needed to sell. It needed to sell to Dana and Marcus, which meant it could not sell to anyone else, which meant we needed anyone who walked through that door on open house day to walk back out and keep walking. And we needed to accomplish this without it ever looking like Dana and Marcus had done a single thing wrong, because if the plan failed and the house sold to a stranger, they still had to live there. I was not going to let the fallout land on them. I spent 3 days on property forums, first-time buyer boards, real estate advice threads. I took notes. I built a list. Then I started making calls. Step 1: the space. Buyers want to walk into somewhere they can breathe. We needed to take that feeling away. Dana and Marcus moved all the furniture away from the walls and pushed it inward, tighter, more crowded, more claustrophobic than the actual square footage deserved. We borrowed extra pieces from anyone willing to lend them: a side table, an armchair from my garage, a coat rack positioned in the hallway like it had a personal grievance. And then, my favorite part, we covered the walls with every piece of motorcycle memorabilia we could get our hands on from the rugby club. Not 1 or 2 pieces, all of it. Flags, trophies, old framed jerseys, a genuinely spectacular poster of something loud and fast that was absolutely not what you want, imagining yourself raising children nearby. The house went from rundown but potential to smaller than the listing photo suggested in about 4 hours. Step 2: the smell. Dana put a head of cabbage on to boil at 7 in the morning. If you have never been inside a house where cabbage has been going for 6 solid hours, I need you to trust me when I say there is no candle on earth that touches it. We also applied ammonia solution to both doorways, the kind of smell that communicates, without any ambiguity, that the neighborhood cats consider this property their shared personal facility. And those drains, those already legendarily difficult drains, received assistance in the form of 24 eggs that had been sitting in my garage for longer than I will specify here. By 9 in the morning, the property offered a fully immersive olfactory experience. The kind a person remembers. Hey, before we go any further, if this story is landing the way I think it is, a subscribe genuinely means everything on a channel this size. Okay, back to it, because we are just getting to the good part. Step 3: the neighborhood. We sourced a deeply tired-looking couch from a storage unit and placed it in the front yard of the neighbor across the road. With full, enthusiastic permission. It looked like it had been there since spring. Then I started calling everyone we knew with a loud car. Not impressively loud, embarrassingly loud. And people showed up. People we had not spoken to in 2 years found compelling reasons to drive through that street at 5 miles an hour on that specific Saturday morning. At the peak of the open house window, the street had the energy of a very particular kind of automotive gathering where the entry requirement was horsepower and absolutely no embarrassment. And then, the rugby club. Marcus played full contact rugby. Real rugby. No padding, Wednesday training, Saturday fixtures rugby. And rugby clubs are full of enormous human beings who will absolutely appear on short notice if the word free and the word food appear in the same sentence. The neighbors directly next door set up a barbecue in their front yard. We supplied the food. We offered drinks. The club arrived on motorcycles in their least formal attire, which was something to experience. By 10:30, the street beside the open house was hosting what appeared to be a well-attended, deeply comfortable gathering of people who lived there, belonged there, and had zero plans to be anywhere else. Now, here is where I almost pulled everything back. A few days before the open house, the eldest heir called Dana directly. He said he had been thinking about the situation. Said he genuinely regretted how things had played out. Said that if Dana and Marcus could meet them even slightly closer on the number, he was confident they could find a path forward. His voice was warm, considered. He sounded like a man who had spent some quiet time with his own conscience and did not love what he had found there. And I will be honest with you. For about 12 hours, I sat with the real possibility that we had misread the situation. That for people had stumbled into an inheritance and made a bad call in the chaos of grief and probate and sudden wealth. People do that. Even decent people do that. Then Dana called the agent. The open house was still scheduled. The price had not moved. The listing was fully live and had been updated the previous day. He had called to slow her down. Not to fix anything. Not because he felt bad. To buy time. I stopped second-guessing. The trap was built. Every piece was in place. All that was left was one Saturday morning, and whatever the world still owed Dana and Marcus after 5 years of doing everything right. The morning of the open house, I drove past at 9:15. The couch was across the road. The barbecue smoke was already up. Somewhere down the block, a motorcycle engine was idling with the confidence of something that had nowhere to be and no intention of hurrying. I parked around the corner. I walked back. And I waited. The first couple arrived at 10:15. They went inside. They were back out in under 3 minutes. The woman said something to the man on the way to the car. He shook his head once. They did not look at each other again before they drove away. I have seen that walk before. That is the walk of to people who are relieved to be leaving somewhere. The next group lasted maybe 7 minutes, but one of them was on the phone for 5 of those 7. Which told me everything I needed to know. They left without speaking to the agent. Around 11, a woman in a silver car pulled up in front of the property. She sat there, looked at the house, looked at the barbecue happening 8 feet to her left, watched as a particularly committed car completed what was, by my count, its 4th slow loop of the block. She did not get out. She drove away. And I want to be clear, nobody was aggressive. Nobody was threatening. Nobody stared anybody down. The rugby lads were eating sausages and laughing at something on someone's phone. The cars were just cars. The barbecue was just a barbecue. Everything happening outside was a completely ordinary Saturday activity taking place in the immediate vicinity of a property that also happened to smell, with deep and unwavering commitment, like a drainage situation in a restaurant that had recently overestimated demand for its cabbage program. There was one man who showed genuine backbone. He toured the house, came back out, and instead of going straight to his car, he walked over to the barbecue and started a conversation. Friendly about it. He asked one of the guys, a lock forward named Derek, which is genuinely the most perfect name for a lock forward in history, whether this kind of gathering happened often. Derek, not pausing from his sausage, said pretty regularly, "Main event is usually the night before," he explained, "a few streets over, and this is the wind-down crowd. 3 or 4 times a month, give or take." The man nodded slowly, processed this, and then carefully, the way someone asks a question when they already suspect the answer. He asked about the drains. Whether they were always like this. Derek said the drains had been a situation for as long as he could remember. Tree roots, most likely. Gets worse when it is warm. He said it the way someone describes a minor recurring inconvenience in a place they genuinely love, which is of course the exact register that makes it utterly convincing. The man thanked him, walked back to his car, left without making an offer. The agent closed the open house at 1 in the afternoon. Dana and Marcus submitted their offer that same day. More than they had planned. More than they should have ever been asked for. but less, significantly less, than what the heirs had tried to extract from a family that had earned the right to that house 5 times over. They signed the paperwork. They paid the deposit. By end of business, the sale was formally and legally marked as under offer. And here is the part one still think about. This is the part that lives in my brain. 3 days after the open house, a formal offer landed on the agent's desk. From the man who had talked to Derek. $30,000 above what Dana and Marcus had paid. $30,000 that, 1 week earlier, would have ended everything. But the paperwork was signed. The deposit had cleared. And the property laws at the time were not ambiguous about what that meant. Once a sale is formally agreed and a deposit is received, it cannot be undone because a better offer arrives afterward. The practice of accepting a higher offer after the fact, of moving the goalposts on people who had already agreed and signed and paid, is specifically, deliberately illegal. There are protections against it. Written into the exact same market rules the heirs had assumed they were playing freely. They had tried to use the open market to take something from my best friend. They got reverse gazumped by the law designed to stop people like them from doing exactly that. I was not in the room when they found out. But I heard it from Dana, who heard it from the agent. I like to imagine the agent delivered the news with absolutely no expression whatsoever. Just information, cleanly transferred. The sale completed. Dana and Marcus went from tenants to owners of a house they had poured years of their lives into. The one with the difficult kitchen and the drains with their own mythology and the walls that had held 5 kids through every version of their lives. It was theirs. Officially, legally, permanently theirs. They renovated it over the years, the way people renovate things they actually plan to keep forever. The kitchen eventually became a real kitchen. The drains were sorted. The motorcycle memorabilia came down, though I like to think some part of it still exists in the walls somewhere, doing its job. The heirs walked away with less than they had come for. And Dana and Marcus walked away with everything Eleanor had always meant for them to have. This is the part one keep returning to, even now. Not whether we were right. I have never spent a single second doubting that. What I think about is Eleanor. A woman who froze a struggling family's rent for 5 years because she believed in them. Who made a promise she fully intended to keep. Who ran out of time to make it official through no fault of her own. And who left behind children who looked at that promise and saw a number to renegotiate. I think she would have been delighted by what happened. They had more money than they would ever spend. But they had never once considered what it looks like when people who have almost nothing decide they have nothing left to lose. Dana and Marcus owned that house long before the paperwork said so. The deed just finally caught up.